Hey, welcome back. It's been a while. I've been pretty busy with house and life and other stuff, and resetting up a garage in a new house and fixing said house. So yeah, it's been a while since I posted a video. This is a brand new stage 6 clutch, and you can see on here, the machine surface of how this clutch is built. Now there needs to be clearance between the clutch and the bell, otherwise it would be dragging all the time. So here's where you would be losing a little bit of performance with your clutch if you're not trying to at least match the mating surface of this to this. So if this is if this fits inside of here, that means that this is a smaller diameter than this. So if this is a constant radius the whole way around the shoes, which, I mean, looking at that, it's pretty close, give or take maybe a little bit, but I mean, it's not like a perfectly machined smooth surface, but this is a smaller diameter because it fits inside of there. So what you'll end up with, which is pretty visible on this, is a stage 6 clutch with a custom front face to move it out a little bit, is you'll get a bunch of bite up here at the front, but you get no bite at the back. And you can still see the machining marks on this where the pad was only biting to there. So like, what does that mean? That basically just means that for the first little bit, like with a new clutch, say like this one, only the tips of the clutch are going to actually touch the bell when the clutch flies out, because the clutch is on a pivot point here, so it actually flies out like so. So what'll happen is, over time, you will get more and more contact as the clutch wears in, but you're not actually getting that with your brand new clutch. So you'll actually put a brand new clutch on and be like, man, this thing kind of slips worse until it beds in a little bit. But you can speed up that bed in or refinish an old clutch so that it has more bite. So this is one that I did a while ago, and you can see the contact face is actually pretty consistent the whole way across the shoe. So that was mated to this. So basically, that when the pads are out, they have the same radius as the diameter, or really close to the diameter of the bell. And that's like the major issue I guess I'm kind of getting at, is that because these shoes are all at an arc that is smaller than the inside of the bell, when they fling out, they only touch on the tips. And then what'll happen is you'll glaze the shoe. So now glazing puts a lot of heat into the shoe in that one spot, and heat can break down the bond of the glue. It can overheat the pad and make it wear down quicker. It can heat up the bell more. So if you can get more contact on it like this versus this, where you're only getting like 3/4, you get more heat dispersion from the pad to the mating surface of the bell. You get more friction surface mating with the bell instead of having just a small amount mating with the bell. And overall, just a better bite and better working clutch. So that brings me to this. This is a 2001 Derbi Revolution. It is really low K. It has like 500 kilometers on it. I believe I am the second owner of it, and the first owner bought it and just left it in a shed. It is basically brand new, and when I pulled the clutch cover off of it the other day, I noticed that had that contact only on the very tips, like the pads haven't been bedded in, which is obvious because it's all new. So I'm going to show you how I quickly bed these things in, or at least get more contact patch onto the clutch. This is also useful if you're doing, say, drum brakes. You can use this same method to like work in your brakes, because again, they have to be smaller to fit inside of the shoe, and they don't push out linear, they push out from the pivot point. So the arc on the shoe is not always the same as the arc of the drum, and you're going to end up with less bite than you potentially could have. So this is pretty much what you need. You're going to need your clutch bell. This is my demo one, but we are going to do it on that one, and I'll show you. You need some strip sanding paper, which you can either make out of regular sanding paper, but I highly recommend using a cloth backed sandpaper, because if you use a paper one, it'll probably just shred it. This cloth stuff's a lot tougher. And some spray adhesive, and then you'll need either like lacquer thinner or brake clean or something to get the adhesive out of the bell when you're done. But essentially what you're going to do is get a piece of cloth sandpaper, and I prefer normally to use a slightly more aggressive grit than this. I think this is 320. 220 will probably be good, just because you don't want to burn up or load up the sandpaper too much, but you want to make it so that this fits basically perfectly inside of there. This one's a bit too long. Tear it down, and then make it so that it fits inside the bell pretty close to end. If there's a little gap, it's not going to hurt anything. And that's first step. Next step, you're going to spray adhesive in there, glue it in, make sure it sticks to the bell, and that's part one. So I'm going to take you over to the Derbi and we're going to rip apart the variator. So these start motors, the start 5s, basically use a Minerelli clutch. This is the same spline on the bell as a Minerelli clutch. This clutch is essentially the same as a Minerelli clutch. This back pulley is almost a Minerelli clutch. It has a slightly different size bearing. This is a stage 6 oversized for a Minerelli. And if you use one of these bearings and machine this back pocket out, you can actually put one of those on a start 5. It does not clear the case, so you would need to figure something out. Either turn this down so you get maximum size, still an increase in size but smaller, or modify the case, or run no case, or put a pull start on it or something. But you can actually get them on there. It's quite common. So for the bell, I'm going to glue this in here. I'm actually going to make it a little shorter, just so. That's the other nice thing about this cloth back stuff, is you can tear it pretty consistently. And then we're going to glue that inside of there. And as you can see on the clutch, it's just basically only starting to wear there. It might be hard to pick up on the camera, but I also did lightly sand these, so it might be a little bit harder to tell, but these are only just biting on the flyouts there. So you're going to want to let that dry, but you basically just have a very abrasive clutch valve at this point. You just want to make sure that the paper is like good and stuck. You're not going to be spinning this up and going for a drive. You're basically just going to be running it up on the stand. So as long as it doesn't let go inside the clutch, which can make a mess, you're not going to be putting a ton of heat into it. You're basically going to be going till the clutch engages a few times, letting off, going, holding the brake, letting off, putting some drag on it, and getting it to sand the tops of the pads off and try and get the engagement point down further on the pad. So you're not really working this stuff super hard. It's basically very temporary, and you want it to be that way because you're going to want to be able to remove all this glue when you're done. So like I said, some type of contact cleaner or acetone or something just to get the adhesive out of there. So the way that I'll often try and get these belts back on so I don't have to struggle is if you take the belt and you jam it down into the bottom, then you can feed it on the front and slide it on. Kind of out of frame here, but I'm just having it on the floor, pulling up on the case tabs and like using my thumbs, pushing the belt into the groove so it ends up kind of locked in like that. And then once it's in there, you can just keep working it with your fingers further and further in. And then you don't got to take the whole variator off on the front. It's very convenient. But yeah, once you get it down pretty far, you can slip that on and then slip the whole rear pulley on there without any issue. So now what I'm going to do is slam just the cover on and start the bike up on the stand. And like I said, run this up a few times and let that sandpaper kind of just work the edges of the clutch. So you can see inside of there right now, there's a bunch of dust. You don't want to breathe that shit in. So best to go bang that off outside, but that's clutch material. So if we actually look at there's a little bit of a lip where this clutch pad is sticking outside of the bell, it seems like. There could actually be some more grab to get if, say, this face was machined down slightly and the clutch was sitting in further. But you can see it's thick. I removed quite a bit. I probably should have done like 1 to 2 revs up. That would have been more than fine. I did probably that 7 or so. It was probably a bit too much. But you can see how it's thicker on this lip here and thinner up here. And that's just showing me that it corrected the curve. And now when this is out, it'll actually be closer to the bell. So I'm just going to take a file and take that little edge off, and I might just like put a little chamfer on there and throw this all back together. So that's pretty much the end of that. Hopefully that was informative. That's how I usually do all my clutches up. All you need is a little bit of spray adhesive and some sandpaper roll. I probably wouldn't do it as much as I did there. I was trying to get a good shot of it, and I went a bunch of times. I took quite a bit off the pads. It's easy to take some off, but it's a lot harder to put it back on. So if you do it a couple times, it's probably better than just trying to go and get it all at once and then realize you've nuked a brand new set of clutch shoes. But yeah, I think that's it for me. This is pretty much useful for any type of centrifugal clutch. Like you could do this on a scooter, moped, go-kart, whatever. Doesn't really matter. As long as you can have enough distance to be able to put something abrasive in there, you can get the shoes to be almost perfectly bedded in with the bell, or at least within a little bit of wear, versus having to wait for it to progress itself. Like I said, this one here has, I've used a bit, and I mean, even still, you can still see, like, it's only worn to there. You still have all this material back here that's not even making contact with the bell very much at all. This one even more so. Some of them will be, some of them be worse than others, but yeah, that's with some use. So I mean, when it's brand new, you're not going to see that for probably a little bit. You'll wonder why your new clutch just doesn't have a whole lot of bite. Probably why. But yeah, take from that what you will. Until next time, take care.